So it is December 6th, and I want to welcome you all to the Journal of Expressive Writing monthly feature and open mic, December 6th, 2023. And I'm really excited to have Myra Shapiro here as our featured poet tonight. I'm also excited that 15 plus people are signed up for our open mic and will be reading their poetry and prose. And I'm also excited to be here with Katarina Conan, who is helping out with the open mic list and keeping track of who's here and who's not and who's next and all of those good things. Katarina, do you want to give a wave and unmute and just say hello to everybody and tell them anything?
It's really lovely to see everyone. I'm very excited about this. So good to see you.
Okay, and feel free to send a direct message, preferably to Katarina, if you have a question about not seeing your name on the open mic list, or maybe you see your name and you don't think it should be there. Contact Katarina with a direct message if you would, and she'll let me know if there's something I need to, just because she's able to pay much closer attention to the chat room than I am. And I also, we will keep the chat room open throughout tonight, so please feel free to comment on Myra's reading as you go along and tell her all the wonderful things you appreciate about her writing. We have a very warm and supportive community here in listening to each other's readings. And it's perfectly fine to say to someone who is reading, oh my gosh, I love this line, or I love that line, or oh my God, great job, we really appreciate it. So chat room is open, and please feel free to make yourself comfortable in it. And Myra can take a look at the chat room once we're done. I also want to introduce tonight, of course, the founder and editor of the Journal of Expressive Writing, our host, Jen Minotti. And I'd love to invite you to say a hello and welcome to everyone, Jen.
Hi, everyone. It's so good to see you. Welcome to the new people who are joining us tonight. And it's so great to see people who I know. And I'm just really thrilled to hear Myra read her work, and the 15 people that we have who will be reading their work too. So thank you so much to Kelly, our fabulous host, and to Katarina for being behind the scenes, making this all work.
And thank you, Jen. Thanks for all your work you do communicating with everybody about this event. And Jen will also be posting links, as she generously does. So when someone is reading in the open mic, if you happen to have had something that's been published in the Journal of Expressive Writing, Jen is likely to put the direct link. The other thing I want to welcome everyone to do is when you're reading from your book that's published, or maybe a poem that's published somewhere, or you want to share your website, perfectly fine to put a link to that in the chat room. Let people know where maybe they could learn some more about you. Okay, and I like to start off our evening together in this community monthly with a poem that I feel is reflective in some way of us gathering together in this space to feed each other, basically, the good, wonderful, spiritual food of beauty, of writing, and caring about each other in the world. So tonight I've chosen, in honor of the incoming solstice, the winter solstice that's coming soon, this wonderful poem by Mark Strand, The Coming of Light. Even this late it happens, the coming of love, the coming of light. You wake and the candles are lit as if by themselves. Stars gather, dreams pour into your pillows, sending up warm bouquets of air. Even this late, the bones of the body shine, and tomorrow's dust flares into breath. So thank you to Mark Strand for The Coming of Light. Well, I'm sure that many of you are familiar with the poet Naomi Shihab Nye. She happens to be the Young People's Poet poet laureate, and many other things. She's been a huge supporter of poetry community, and certainly is an exquisite poet herself. So I want to tell you what Naomi Shihab Nye has said about Myra Shapiro's latest book, When the World Walks Toward You. She says, I bow down to the astonishing, utterly powerful poems of Myra Shapiro. Having always loved her voice and now encountering it further along the path is a gift beyond measure. Life and beauty, death, and its mysterious music, like a perpetual humming beneath all our exacting movements, the diminishment and death of her very beloved partner, the exquisite, heartbreaking dailiness of days and dreams for the women of our own histories, as well as the far off, equally deserving women of Gaza. Why not? Oh, world askew, Shapiro sings. She's a master. Myra Shapiro's poems have appeared in many periodicals and anthologies, including The New Yorker and 2 editions of the Best American Poetry. She is the recipient of the Dylan Thomas Poetry Award from the New School and was the finalist for the Robert H. Winter Award from the Poetry Society of America. Her books of poems are I'll See You Thursday, 12 Floors Above the Earth, and When the World Walks Towards You, as well as the memoir 4 Sublets, Becoming a Poet in New York. Myra serves on the board of directors of Poets House and teaches poetry workshops for the International Women's Writing Guild. Thank you for being with us tonight. Myra, it's really a pleasure and an honor to have you here. Thank you for coming. So if you would unmute, there you go.
I did. Thank you. Thank you. I'm looking at the faces. That's that's what's caught me up right now. And I see friends that are dear to me and relatives. I mean, people from my life going all the way back. So I'm very moved, very, very moved. Do you want me to begin now, or do you have any questions before I begin?
Myra, if you would begin, that would be terrific. We're ready. We're ready to hear you.
Okay. Well, I'm going to begin with a poem that I wrote in Maine. I go to Maine every summer, and when I was there, I wrote this one, Lake Damariscotta. And the lake said, I am a table. And the trees said, I'll surround you. And the island said, I'll be the centerpiece. And I said, may I sit? And I asked, what will you serve? And the fish wouldn't answer. And the sun began to leave. But the waves took pity and said, memory. And with that prompting, I am going to start in memory. I will go all the way back to my first exchange with water. This took place on Coney Island when I was 7, on being pushed when I was 7. He threw me in the bay and I refused to rise. A friend convinced him children swim by nature. So would I. His child, daughter of the show-off fighter, I held myself down. Damn if I'd perform for any father's friend who never even glanced at me. And down there, I took the time to swear and plan and look at bubbles coming from my mouth. Those men who pulled me out, they had to pump like mad. They were the ones who had to dance. And so that was the kid with another inheritance I will read from, another inheritance I wrote from. The inheritance. Just a grapefruit, but it never fails to make the word mama when I cut it, store the half uneaten, flat against a plate, pink meat down, so that tomorrow when I eat it, it's as juicy as today. Washing fruit, she taught us, but never this. She just did it, saved the fruit against the plate, as I do, as I saw it done in my daughter's house this morning. And so, past time to future, and when I think of the past to the future, I start in New York City. That first poem in the water was Coney Island. We ended up moving south to a little town in Georgia. And I always longed to get myself back to New York, which I finally did. That's in my memoir, 4 Sublets. And I'll read out of that experience. The knowledge that I have everything in the garden. At 10:30 last night on First Avenue, a man in a black jacket, a tall man with a mustache, was picking out a cantaloupe. Oh, New York, you give me 63 degrees and a whole moon in November. Pyramids of fruit stacked up on the sidewalk. And my friend, I'm walking with my arm around my friend, coming from a play that had 11 women talking with a love for household lamps, snake handling, plastics as an image of eternity, and right here on your east side, a handsome man giving his nose to the sweetness of a melon. And New York continues to give me experiences, sidewalk experiences. And I want to read a poem from this very summer. It will be in my new manuscript. Again, a New York experience. Crossing the street to Paradis. Crossing the street to Paradis, a favorite cafe. I am sitting outside with a blueberry scone, the New York Times, and a cappuccino. People pass. It's busy. In front of me, a tall man stops. Mom, he mutters, so I look up while his fingers unzip to pull out and dangle his penis. How do you like my dick? He asks. And relaxed, I answer, I wasn't looking at it. At that moment, a young man behind me lurches forward to down the exhibitionist, socks him, while the young woman with him keeps asking if I'm all right. Yes, I am, I say. I'm a New Yorker. The tall man has run off. My defenders, assured, walk on. I return to the Times and my cappuccino. A conversation walks by. Someone saying something about Hamlet and Central Park. Are they talking about Joe Papp's Shakespeare in the Park? Yes, they say. And I say, oh, I love Hamlet. For years, I taught how we know something's rotten from the first line. And I continue. There's a divinity that shapes our ends, rough hew them how we will. Excited, he wants to know my name. Are you in it? I ask. And the slim man with the big smile says, I'm Hamlet. That was so wonderful happening this summer, right across the street from where I live. Hamlet walking by as I ate my blueberry scone. So, my love affair with New York, with the people in my life, my friends, my, I see you, Carol, and I keep looking up toward you, relatives who are here surprising me. Thank you. I want to read now. My husband, when he retired, knew how much I wanted New York, and so he came, and we set up living here in the 90s, in the 1990s. He died about 5 years ago. Before that, I wrote this poem, Put the Kettle On. Before I read it, let me say something because Kelly, you read from Naomi Shihab Nye's words. She and Harold was my husband, formed a bond because of the Middle East. Naomi Shihab Nye, her father was Jordanian. Harold, when he retired, began to work for peace in the Middle East, took a trip to Israel, then Jordan, then Egypt, then Syria. We have a picture on the back of my book. The photograph I chose to put there is me on a camel in Syria at Palmyra. Those ruins were ruined again, I hate to say. And my husband is standing by, Harold is standing by. And so that time in our lives, very important, and continues, my God, what's happening now in the world. Horrifying. Put the kettle on. Tea, I've begun to ask each evening, part way between dinner and bedtime, and he's begun to answer, yes. It's an old marriage. We're beginning to merge. Just this month, arms aching, I began following his morning routine. The hot shower, so my arms move with ease. In his case, it's knees. Last night, I wanted to sit next to him as he sat on his side of the bed, simply to chat a bit about the Middle East, the peace talks he's been listening to, and what else was important today. I wanted to hear his excitement before we went to our separate sides of the bed. Our particular pillows and the good sleep. It's all just begun. March is here, and we're living it. And I'll read, these are the pearls. It's Besame Mucho coming through revolving doors. It's 2018, the future, far from songs we dance to, left inside me. Oh, waiter, bring me fresh plums on a plate. He'd refuse to eat. Patiently, his caretaker urged, "We want you to be well. If you won't eat, she'll kill me." He smiled. "Then we'll have to go to your funeral." He could do that. Southern charmer to the end. To find him, open the kitchen cabinet. Coca-Cola, a bag of Cheetos, the salt inside the shaker he would fill, a half jar of Skippy peanut butter still intact. I don't want it. It's more than I can fathom. The whole of the kitchen. The future filled with Besame Mucho and blintzes he stored in the freezer. Thaw, little pancakes, flicker, flicker. I am speaking of his flashlights in the drawer. And I'll end with borscht. Buy a marrow bone for stock. Add fresh beets, onion, carrots, throw in lima beans, simmer for 3 hours, then serve it to your family. When everyone has eaten, leaving you to eat alone, linger. Close your eyes, take the bone into your hand to chew the clinging bits of meat until the bone is smooth as ivory. Having saved the best for last, rough your lips along the porous edge to suck. Deep, precise, a hummingbird's exacting tongue. The quivering marrow will be yours, the earth's sweet offering. The butcher, the broth, the bone, the solitude. When I leave this earth, I want to be that very bone, used up for all I'm worth. That's it. Thank you.
Wow. Oh, wow. The bone.
The bone.
The bone.
Yes.
Wow. Well, it's been a very, very moving and amazing reading, Myra. Just really, really special. Thank you so much. Love every one of those poems. And I know everybody is commenting on them, and we all have our own, some of us who know you have our own memories of having heard you read many of them in different places over the years. I'm thinking about constellations that have influenced you, your writing, and knowing that I think these different communities that feed you as a writer. And I'm thinking about the Great Mother Conference, where Lake Demarascata took place. I'm thinking about the International Women's Writing Guild and your years there, and Poets House, these places of influence where I'm sure you've been influenced and you've been profoundly influential. So I think the question buried here has to do with what would be missing for you, perhaps, in your writing without some of these really important communities?
I can't even imagine. I mean, if I think of those communities, of course, I go back to what led me to them. And that goes way back how the Great Mother Conference started way in the 70s. I met Robert Bly, who began that conference. On my, it came in the mail, the advertisement for a trip to Greece and Sicily with Robert Bly. And I had just begun to write. I was a high school English teacher and teaching Hamlet, as I said, to Hamlet walking by me on near Union Square right here. And I began to think when my daughters went off to college, oh, I think I'll write more and probably teach less, and writing I can do for the rest of my life. So that's how that began. And the trip to Greece and Sicily fell in my lap, an advertisement in the mail from not Robert, it was the University of California that advertised it. And so I went, and Robert and I became close, and I found out about the Great Mother Conference. And my first book, I'll See You Thursday, he published. He was the one who asked for the manuscript and saw that that book was published. So my goodness,
My goodness, my goodness, indeed.
I mean, that was wonderful, and a marvelous thing that happened that also kind of grew to cement my marriage. See, because when you're in a long marriage, it has lots of parts, and you're trying to become the person you are, but then there's another person. And so how then, through the stages of a marriage, well, at first, Harold wasn't coming on this trip. He said, you should go. You're beginning to write. And I said, but it's my birthday. I want you to come. So he said, okay, I'll go to Greece for 2 weeks. And then when it's Sicily, I'll go back. Well, on the second day, Robert Bly said of Harold to the group, you see this man? He's never lost the puer in his eyes, meaning the boy. And that was so important. No, I think, for someone to recognize a part of you. And Harold started going to the Great Mother Conference as well. That was marvelous.
It's a very magnetic moment. That he shared that whole world with you of the Great Mother Conference.
And now our grandson, my older daughter's son, Ben, comes to the conference. He came during Harold's last year to help Harold. He's devoted. So this, to make a
which connects,
what?
Which I think all of this also connects to maybe feminism or the International Women's Writing Guild and that community.
Yes,
which I'd love to hear what your history is in terms of landing into the International Women's Writing Guild.
I'm living in Chattanooga, and something comes in the mail from someone who's starting the International Women's Writing Guild. And I think how interesting, workshops. And I had just begun to write, someday maybe. And then I meet the woman who began, because when I came to New York, someone mentioned me to her, and we had dinner together, and she invited me in the 90s to teach. And that's when I came, and every summer after that, went up to Skidmore, and now all the places we've been, and made, intimate friends that are looking at us right now.
Yes. Yeah. And
it's
so
good.
You continue to teach. You continue to teach poetry.
I do.
Yes. How does that feed you?
Oh, goodness.
And your writing?
Well, I also continue to have a poetry group that started when I first came to New York. Again, from my taking workshops with people like Galway Connell, and Jean Valentine was very important to introduce me to some women. And this goes back already how many years? More than 20. We're still meeting. So the poems that I think anyone who wants to be a poet doesn't stop reading, doesn't stop hearing. And it's very important to me to hear poems out loud. So when you're part of a group, that happens.
Yes.
And that happens in teaching, because when you're teaching, you hear people recite poems. It's very, very important. And the people I've met at the international, at the IWWG, oh my goodness, who continue to reinforce what I do and all
Reinforce what you do. It's community.
You've got the word that we should put in capital letters. Community.
Yes.
Whether it's a poetry group, whether you're teaching a class, whether this is, I'm old now, really old. And the stage in life that I've come to makes me realize that what is important is, as I narrow my world, community. Community. There are a lot of people out there to enjoy, to like, but now it's really family and writers.
Family and writers. And what about the Poets House? Could you just tell us a little bit about your work in the past or even currently? What's the influence of Poets House in New York?
Yes, Poets House began also when I first came back to New York from down south. And when it began, Stanley Kunitz was the poet who had the idea. In fact, some people call it the Poets House. And he said, no, and he didn't want a possessive poets, T apostrophe S, no, Poets House, no possessive. Let there be a house for poetry. And so with that idea, he interested people, and it started in a cafeteria at a high school, and then moved on to a place in Soho. More people became interested, and now it has its own place down at Battery Park. With the pandemic, it closed. Then there was a leak from the apartment house above it. So for the last few years, it's been a couple of years, I don't know, been under construction, and everything that's come from it is online, is on Zoom, online somehow. And now it's opening again. There will be tours in just, I think next month is when they begin. This past summer, every summer, a walk across the Brooklyn Bridge with poets reciting. So it's a wonderful community, and the board keeps changing. Wonderful board of people.
And
library. I didn't say mainly it's a library of poetry books. If you have a book of poetry you've written and it hasn't been sent to Poets House from the publisher, send it.
Because anybody can come in. It's almost, it holds, it's just, and can look at every poetry manuscript that's in there.
And before the pandemic, it was always, the tables were always filled. It looks on the Hudson River, it's down there. And you would always see it filled with people doing work. And you assume with poetry, children too, programs for children.
And I'd love to wind up with hearing about your current poetry practice. What is Myra's relationship to poetry in the day, and to the production of, you said, my next book after, and I think Jen has put she's put wonderful links. Jen has put wonderful links to Poets House and IWWG, and also to where people can purchase When the World Walks Toward You. And also, I want two last questions, I could talk to you all night, but I do want to hear about your daily practice. And then I want to hear about how you came to the title of When the World Walks Toward You.
Okay. Well, my daily practice is, and I wish I could say it was happening this week. This is a week where everything else seems to be happening. But my daily practice would be, and certainly has been, to get up in the morning, make something hot, go back to bed. I have that luxury now, and read. And so always I'm reading a book of poems, plus other things, fiction, nonfiction, but always a book of poems. And then, so that's part of daily practice. And I try to write some each day. I also, as I said, have a poetry group. We meet once every 2 weeks. Well, and through the Great Mother Conference, have another workshop that I go to. And that's, we used to meet in person, now on Zoom. So all of that, what do you say? That involvement with poetry communities, whether it's a small group, a larger group, gets me to writing toward that.
Yes.
And through and out of it, toward it and out of it. The poem I read, These Are the Pearls, came when I was doing one of the workshops. And when we broke for lunch, I was sitting and eating, and Harold had died not long before. And the waiter came, and I did think, oh, waiter, bring me fresh plums on a plate. And Besame Mucho was coming through the revolving doors. So this is it. The world of what I do is very much narrowed.
Following the impulse. So how is my final question for you tonight has to do with when the world walks towards you. What was your idea? Because I know you were very, very wedded to that title. It was very important to you.
Yeah. I don't know. I can't remember now because I'm on to the title of my next book. But I love titles, and I love shaping a book too. So somehow in shaping the manuscript of poem, it felt to me that I was receiving, maybe by the third book or something, I felt that sensation of not needing to go toward, but just almost being there, sitting, taking in, listening, and digesting. The world toward you. That's how, yeah.
Beautiful. Oh my
and
gosh.
It did,
wow.
And
it has.
So fortunate to be here right this minute.
Myra, it's really exciting to know you've got another book in the works and a penis poem to at least start it off. Your New York poem is going to be in it. Wonderful. And well, gosh, so do you mind we're going to open up and listen to some other writers here share their good
My
writings? Thank you. And I will check back in with you, Myra, at the very end to give you a chance to say good night. And so welcome, everybody. I am going to just turn the recording off. Turn the recording off. Why don't I see where I can do that? Stop recording. Okay.